Live from our cryptid camper, I'm Shay, and I'm here with my good friend Tom. We'd like to thank you for joining us for Season 1, Episode 22 of Scare Your Pants Off, our American road trip. In today's episode, we've set up camp in Washington. How you doing, Tom?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well. Washington was a struggle a little bit, I'm not going to lie. It was a little hard to find. There's a lot, but not a lot with a lot of detail.
Yeah, I thought that I I thought I would just have a list of like 50 cryptids to pick from Washington and Pacific Northwest. We just know that strange things happen there. Historically, we know that, and I'll tell you, the list wasn't as big as I thought, Bigfoot's obviously very big up there. And I almost did Bigfoot, but yeah, I was surprised because it's you yeah, you hear about, that Washington, Oregon area, that and even Northern California, where just strange things happen.
Yep.
And but it was slim pickings, but it's cool still. So you watch anything good recently?
Let's see I feel like I feel like I rewatched. So I literally just rewatched again Halloween Kills because
Nice.
how do you not? I think wait a minute. Do I remember correctly? Were you supposed to be watching Antlers
I did.
sometime
I
recently?
really liked it. I did, and yes, it was. I thought it. I had a lot of fun watching it. About the Wendigo. Not enough movies about Wendigo, so
Mm-mm.
and it's Del Toro, right? So he
Yep.
was just. I mean, everything he does is really cool. So yeah, and I like the cast too. I thought the cast was really good, and it's some people that you don't typically see in horror flicks and stuff. So
Yeah, the little boy, I don't and I should know his name. I should have looked it up before, but I didn't. The little boy was awesome. The not the one that was with the father, but the little one that like was, oh my
mhm,
God,
yeah,
he broke my heart. He was so good.
yeah, that was yeah, it was well done. It was cool. It was just yeah, it was I I liked it even more than I thought I was gonna like it. So which doesn't happen too often because I knew I would like it, but like I didn't I really really enjoyed it. Thought it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It's
Did I tell you? I don't know if I told you. I saw something interesting and I did fact check it a little, so I believe it to be true. Could be wrong, but I believe it to be true. I believe Willem Dafoe is going to be playing Nosferatu in a remake.
I love it because he was in Shadow of the it was a Shadow of the Vampire or
Yep.
something, and that was a
Yeah.
fantastic film. Like that wasn't just a movie. That was a film. Like that
Yeah.
it was just so well. I love Willem Dafoe. Love
Oh,
Willem Dafoe.
and he'll do, and I feel, and it's awesome too. So for anybody who doesn't know, Nosferatu came out in 1922,
Yes.
and then it was actually one of the first full length horror movies, and it wasn't the first horror movie. The first horror movie actually think came out in like 1896 or 1897. It was only 3 minutes long, so that's why I'm saying one of the first full length.
Yeah.
But it's so awesome because if you watch Nosferatu, I love classic horror. I love like the old black and white, no special effects kind of, like they just had to figure out how to make shit creepy. Um, of all the remakes they've done, I actually love that they're doing this because I feel like Nosferatu didn't have as big a life as it should have, and it has a big one, obviously, and it's momentous for all of horror. It really is a lot of where most things horror related stem from. But I am so excited to see him play this.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome too. And for you guys out there, if you haven't seen it, check it out, and then just do a little like deep dive on it. It's super interesting about the lead actor and the rumors that are about him, and possibly may have been a real vampire. And it's yeah, it's just a classic. And like she said, it's one of the earliest ones, and it's definitely one we'll have to watch in season 2 of our show
Oh
here.
yeah. So
So
are we spoiling a little bit for the first time ever about season 2?
we can if you want. It's up to you. I'll leave that up to you.
Well, so we won't say much, but obviously season 1 cannot last forever, and Tom and I have decided that we're going to maybe do a road trip through half of the United States of America and take a little bit of a break, and then maybe stick some roots down in our own little drive-in or something, and talk about some horror movies, because as you can tell listening to this podcast, as passionate as we are about the cryptids and the hauntings and the strange encounters and everything like that, horror, yeah, we're gonna totally nerd out a little, and I'm super excited for season 2. We don't have all the kinks worked out yet, but I think you guys are really gonna like it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, we had the idea to break it up for you guys too, because it's 50 episodes is a lot, or 52 I think, or whatever, with our bonuses and stuff like that. So we thought it might be a good way to break it up and sort of some of the monotony for you guys and us. And yeah, more news to come. I'm excited for it, but it's still going to be in the horror realm. So good stuff to come, guys. It's going to be great. So, well, all right. This week I had the cryptid, and again, I said it at the top that I thought there would be a huge list, and there really wasn't. And basically, I found two major ones, and well, two with a good amount of info on them. And one was Bigfoot, which I almost chose because we have not discussed a Bigfoot on this, but
It's
there's
true.
part of the reason we feel like you all kind of know the Bigfoot, and at some point we'll definitely discuss him. But we wanted to do some of the ones that you guys maybe not heard of, or we haven't heard of, or might be a little more interesting than just a Bigfoot. So I went with, and I'm wondering, have you ever heard of this, Shae? The Bat Squatch.
So I haven't heard of it, but honestly, like I feel like the name paints a pretty good picture for me. So I feel like I can venture a guess, but I'm excited. So tell me about him.
Yeah. So as you astutely picked up, yes, from its thing, it is a bat Sasquatch hybrid, and it's said to be over 9 feet tall and weigh as much as 2 grown grizzly bears. It has piercing yellow eyes, blue tinged fur, razor sharp teeth, a wolf like muzzle, a broad muscle bound torso, and bat like wings that could span up to 50 feet. Pretty huge. That's like that 50 feet. That's a big wingspan.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes sense because it is over 9 feet tall. So it would need, crazy big wings to counteract and the weight as well of 2 grown grizzlies, which is, over a ton right there.
Yeah.
The beast is also said to possess psychic and telekinetic abilities and powers that allow it to affect car engines, radios, and televisions. So, the first sightings occurred shortly after the eruption of Mount St. Helens on March 27th, 1980. So that was when the big eruption happened. And then for like a couple months after, there was like small little eruptions, which is pretty typical with volcanoes. You have the big one, and then you might have some just like, not aftershocks because that's an earthquake, but something like that, where it's just small little things. So, word of mouth began to spread very quickly, and locals started to look for it at this point because now, it's become a big enough story. But after a few months, sightings started to subside and people started to talk about it less and less. And then it was pretty much forgotten for over a decade. It's, you might hear a few things, but pretty much forgotten until April of 1994, when Brian Canfield was driving his truck down a road, and it suddenly stalled. So obviously he gets out and pops the hood, and as he's tinkering around in there, all of a sudden he hears a loud bang, and like something that just like dropped or landed on the roof of his truck. So and he said the suspension sort of squirmed and buckled from the impact and weight of whatever dropped on the roof. So nervous, obviously, he kind of slowly peers around the open hood, and he sees the bat squatch, staring and snarling at him. Obviously terrified, he just takes off running, and he's near woods, and he just runs into the woods, and he's in there for hours. He's just waiting to hear no noise. He's waiting for it to leave, and he's in there for hours. So after a few hours, he comes back to his truck. And the bat squatch is gone, and he heads back into town. When he gets back into town, locals notice that the back of his shirt was torn. His truck was scratched to all hell, just scratched up all over, and he was like, his nerves racked. He's just kind of like mumbling and talking incoherently, and yeah, it's just a weird scene, but I love this. But the locals, being locals, just chalk it up to him having one of those nights.
Oh, yeah, that sure. That lines up. That makes it's fine. He's just a little drunk or whatever, right?
Yeah, he must have just tied one on and had a crazy night. And, that's pretty much what they think until he begins to open up about the experience. And, more and more, he only tells a few people, but people tell people, and people tell people, and people tell people. And then some local papers finally come around and, start asking him questions. And he talks a little bit, gives a little bit of information, but most of the article is based off of the other people things, because he's just gets sick of it, and it was a harrowing experience. So he didn't want to talk about it. And to this day, he won't talk about the experience. People in recent years have tried to reach out and, kind of verify claims or, do podcasts on them. And he does not talk about it anymore. He's, I thought it was pretty interesting, because if you're making something up, yeah, technically maybe he's just like, if he was lying, he's like, this went too far. But to me, it's more like, it gives some more validity to the experience, that he's just like, nope, I don't want to talk about it. So
yeah, that's the same that I was having, because it's I mean, how would you feel if you were him? That's awful.
yeah,
It's I mean, they just made like a big joke out of it, and something that really happened. It's gotta, I mean, I wouldn't want to talk to anybody either. I'd be like, no, you had your chance, sorry.
yeah,
But
yeah. And being in a small town, everybody's talking about it. It's, yeah, you're absolutely, I 100%, because that's a crazy experience. So after that, there weren't many sightings for a little while. And really, you might hear of, oh, I saw something in the sky or something like that. But really, the next sighting isn't for about, like, true sighting isn't for about 15 years. And that was when, in 2009, near Mount Shasta, several hikers claimed to have seen it fly out of a crevasse in the mountain. So, and others that were in the area also claimed to see something, thought that, they said they did see something, but they thought it might have been more like a thunderbird, which, okay, it's flying over. I could see that. So then, it's pretty quiet for about 2 years. And then in 2011, a man claims that he was in his backyard playing catch with his dog when it flew directly over him, and it was so low, like he almost could have reached up and touched it. It was that low as it flew over him. Then then we go about 3 years for the next sighting when on April 14th, 2014, students at Archbishop Hoban High School claim that a giant black mass zoomed by their class window, and they said it was like going like the speed of sound. It was just so fast, but it was a huge mass that just right past the window. So, and that was the last major sighting that I have found about, but there have been sightings since, and according to locals in the area and stuff, sightings usually pick up in the summer months, which I guess would make sense because people are outside hunking, doing stuff, and which would, I get it. So that's essentially the story. Just a few things about it. It has been compared to the Mothman, which I can totally get the,
Yeah.
Get it. I mean, it's piercing eyes and they both fly. I mean,
they're huge. Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
The fact, so people compare it because it first showed up after Mount St. Helens eruption, where the Mothman usually shows up before, right?
A little bit, yeah. Yep.
Before a catastrophe, usually with the Mothman, where this was after, but again, it was after the main eruption, but there was a bunch of little eruptions afterwards. So I can kind of, I can see that comparison as well. And the fact that they both have these sort of telekinetic powers that can affect radios, cars, and all that jazz, which supposedly the Mothman can too. So I can totally compare it, where others say it's more like a Thunderbird, where I don't see that comparison as much, aside from maybe the size. They have, a lot of Thunderbirds don't typically have fur, to my knowledge. And just one last thing, I thought this was cool, because again, remember I said, sightings pick up in the summer. There's a local brewery, and one of their summer, special IPAs is a bat squatch. I thought that was cool and smart.
Very smart. I love it.
Jump in, and that is the bat squatch.
That's funny because and I love the idea of naming. It's super smart for local businesses to name some of their products after the cryptids and the hauntings and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because like anything I ever hear about Bigfoot and like just the different cryptids is the odor. So like part of me is like, oh, I don't know that I would want to name a food or beverage after something that's stinky. But at the same time, the cryptid lover in me is like, I'm totally gonna drink that. And I don't care what it smells like. I'm at least gonna try it. And I'm sure it's delightful. And if I ever actually literally or physically get to go to the area, please believe I'm going to try one. But I love that though. It's an absolute stroke of genius, honestly, to utilize that culture. It's so awesome.
Yeah, that's funny. I didn't thought about the smell, but that's a funny take on it. Because when you hear about it, especially Bigfoot, it's that overpowering odor that just permeates everything. So that's funny. Yeah, it was. I thought it was a pretty fun one. I hadn't heard of the bat squat. I've heard of these. There's other Sasquatch hybrids with stuff throughout the country, but thought it was a fun little story, and yeah, that was a fun one.
All right. Well, I have the haunting for today.
Okay.
And it's a little short, but as with, and I'm starting to have a revelation of I might make horrible decisions sometimes, but it's okay. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a trigger warning, only because this does involve children, and it does involve children dying, and I'm not going to do a lot of trigger warnings, but when it comes to like kids and stuff like that, I'm absolutely going to tell you this is a story that involves the death of children. So with that being said, I'm going to go on, and I'm going to talk about the Campbell House, and it's in Spokane, Washington. So the Campbell House was actually designed in 1898, and it was built for Amasa Campbell and his family. So we're going to give you a little bit of a background on Mr. Campbell, just so it kind of lays a path, I think, to make other things make sense. So Mr. Campbell and his business partner, I apologize, John Finch, owned two mines. These mines were so successful that in 1903, they were actually able to sell them off for $3 million in 1903. I don't even know how much that is right now,
Yeah,
and
a
blows
lot.
my mind, though.
That's a lot of wow.
Yeah. So in a little bit before they sold it, however, though, in 1892, Mr. Campbell and Mr. Finch were actually caught in the middle of a violent labor strike, a violent one. That's actually how it says it. It's a violent labor strike. So we all know strikes. We've seen them. We know, what they mean. But a violent one, really, to be depicted that way, it shows you how bad it probably got.
Yeah.
So the strike was between union and non-union miners, and the owners, the duo, Mr. Campbell and Mr. Finch, actually brought in, quote unquote, scab miners by rail from California. So it's awful. And if you think about it at this point, so obviously at some time coming up, they're going to be selling the mines and whatnot. But I feel like this right here is pretty pivotal, and I feel like it shows that the possibility that these two acquired some enemies is probably pretty high.
I would imagine.
Back to the house now. So the house was constructed for roughly $30,000, but after everything on the inside was done too, the custom fixtures, the furniture, the house actually cost upwards of $80,000. And today, that's over $2.7 million.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy.
Now, what happens in this house in the early 1900s is that part I was warning you about. There are a lot of claims that this happened. I can't actually find like solid articles, but this is the widest claim that I've seen, and a lot of people seem to believe this. So obviously there are other stories, like with any other places. There are other stories and other possibilities, but this is the one that I'm going to talk about today. So in the early 1900s, the Campbell family that had 4 children would actually lose 3 of their children in one night, brutally.
Oh.
So 3 of their children are murdered by an intruder, but the 4th child was abducted and never heard from again.
Oh, jeez. That's so sad.
It is. It's awful. And so, like I said, the sheer evidence to back this up is very scarce, but it did happen a very long time ago. So that's not unheard of either.
Yeah. I just want to jump in. So I'm taking notes if people are wondering what I'm doing, but $3 million in 2022 is $85,714,285.70. No, wait, that's in 2019. I'm sorry. It only goes to 2019 and 71 cents. So
wow,
probably right around there still, maybe a little bit more because it's 2022. So, but yeah, $85 million.
That's insane. That's crazy. I don't.
Yeah, that's nuts. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, thank you for looking that up. Honestly, thank you for doing the math. I meant to do it, and then it just slipped my mind. So, that's insane. That's so much money. I don't know. All right, that's crazy. But thank you. So the Campbell House actually still stands today, but it is currently an arts and culture museum.
Cool.
So now I'm going to dive into the hauntings and the claims that happen in the house. There's a portrait, or was a portrait. I don't know if it still stands at this moment, but last I was able to read, it was still there. A portrait of Mr. Campbell. and the eyes of that portrait are said to follow you.
I love that.
That's fairly common in some paintings, and it really genuinely has to do with the positioning of the pupils. But doesn't make it less creepy. Still creepy. I don't care what anybody says.
I love it. I think it's so cool.
And it's also believed by some people that his position in the not the photo, in the portrait changes slightly. So his hands will be in a slightly different position, or he'll be leaning more to one side, or however it is. So creepy art, absolutely love it, and yeah, so I'm excited. Now, another claim is that in the children's bedrooms, quick sightings of the children are known to happen, and you can also hear them playing. You can hear the laughter, the chatter, the happy sounds you would be hearing from a child's bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
The other claims are pretty standard stuff. You get your disembodied voices, objects moving, pictures tilting. You hear footsteps and whatnot. But that's all I really have for the Campbell House. But the story is just so interesting to me because it's I really feel like when it's left unknown that way, like where is that fourth child? What is happening? Where did they go? If
It's a great story. That was great. And I mean, so sad too. I'm glad you did give that disclaimer because I mean, 3 out of 4, and then the fourth missing, which makes total sense to me why the place would be active too, and just a sad story. But the story had, like you say, it was short, but it had a little bit of everything in it. In that, it's oh God, it's yeah, 3 out of 4. I couldn't imagine being.
I can't imagine losing any kids, let alone 3 out of the 4, and then the fourth one also is just gone.
Yeah.
So then you just have a whole sense of not knowing, and it's just, I mean, that's your baby, and I don't know, I can't even fathom an occurrence like that. It's awful.
Yeah, it's so sad, and it's just yeah. I mean, losing one, and then just that the not knowing, is gotta be so terrible. It just but I loved it. That was a good one. Very, I liked it. Ooh, it's got hot in my place. Like sweating all of a sudden.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know why. All of a sudden, it just got hot in here. Maybe it's just me.
Hot flashes, maybe.
Yeah, going through the menopause. So, yeah, this week I had the Strange Encounters, and so Washington's a very active state, which you would think because it's the Pacific Northwest. Again, we just know that weird stuff happens in that Pacific Northwest. But as I'm doing research, a lot of them are just your sort of typical, I saw a few lights through the sky, or I saw, just not a lot of meat to the bone on them. So it was a little frustrating because I believe I think they said they were like the 5th most active state. I think the 3rd or 5th. It's one of the most active states as far as UFO sightings. But I eventually found a really cool one. And have you heard of the Maury Island incident?
Doesn't ring a bell.
So I picked this for 2 reasons, or a few reasons, and I'm sure you'll pick up on it why as I'm going through. So the Maury Island incident. So on or around June 26, 1947, Harold Dahl and his boss, Fred Chrisman, reported an explosion of a giant donut-shaped flying saucer near Maury Island in the Puget Sound. Now, supposedly, the explosion happened on June 21st, 1947, so about 5 days earlier. They waited about 5 days to report it. And they claim on the 21st, Dahl and his son, Christopher, who are lumber salvagers. I had never heard of a lumber salvager. I guess it was a job at the time. I don't know if it still is. It's they would drive around. They have a boat and they go around primarily in the Puget Sound, but they might go out a little bit further and they just salvage lumber. You grab it and then they work for that Christmas guy and he sells it to other people, whatever they salvage. It's like, oh, that's interesting job. Never heard of, you know. Never,
No, that's cool though.
yeah, collecting timber from the sea. So on that day, they claim that 6 unidentified flying objects appeared in the sky right above their boat. And then all of a sudden, one of them just suddenly explodes and starts raining down a metal substance that would kill their dog and, yeah, sad, and burn his son Christopher's arm. So obviously terrified and frightened, and they like, all right, we got to get out of here. They turn the boat around and they just head back for shore. And they are so scared and just want to get out of there so quickly that they just run the boat right up onto the beach. They ground they ground their boat, which is not a good thing to do and hard to take care of because it's a 50-foot boat too. It's not like a little dinghy.
So yeah, that's not going to be easy to fix. Yeah.
But they're so terrified that they run it aground and they just jump off and they run and hide in some cliffs that are near the beach on Maury Island, and they just hide in there for hours. So, so eventually, they make their way out and try to get the boat back in the water and head back to work or whatever. And so after the incident, Dahl gives his boss, Fred Chrisman, 2 fragments that supposedly came from the explosion. And Chrisman then in turn passes that off to a UFO magazine publisher named Ray Palmer. Ray Palmer then retains a Kenneth Arnold to investigate it. Kenneth Arnold, in turn, gets 2 U.S. Army specialists to investigate it.
So, kind of passing that right along, aren't they?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. And so the 2 U.S. Army specialists, they box it up and for examination, and they are going to take it back to their headquarters in San Francisco. So they on August 1st, they hop on their B-25 plane, leaving from Tacoma, heading to San Francisco. When en route, their plane crashes and they both die. So very quickly, the Tacoma Times reports that the plane was either sabotaged or shot down to prevent the inspection of the cargo, which, I mean, it does seem strange that the plane goes down. So I don't know where they got that info, if it was just, or they just, made that leap themselves, but that's what they claimed. And it's right around this time that Dahl and Chrisman claim that they are starting to get visits, and it becomes multiple visits from men dressed in all black, telling them to keep their mouth shut, don't tell anybody. If they tell anybody, there's going to be trouble for them and problems, and they better keep their mouth shut.
That's so okay. Not to interrupt. Is that one that has to be one of the reasons you picked it, right?
Yes.
I love it. Awesome.
Yes. Once I read that, I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. And yeah, so they tell them, don't say a word. And they kind of keep quiet for a little while. But so soon after that plane crash, where the B-25 with the Army Rangers or Army specialists, the FBI gets involved and they start to investigate. And very like a couple days into their investigation, they claim that Dahl and Chrisman both admit that it was a hoax. Now, I have never seen anything from either Dahl or Chrisman specifically saying it was a hoax. They never came out and said, no, it was a hoax or anything like that. This is what as far as my research goes,
Mm.
this is just the FBI saying, yes, they admitted that it was all a hoax. And they said after testing some of the metals, because I guess they were able to retrieve that supposed metal from that V-25 crash, that the debris or the metal that supposedly rained down was actually just debris from the sea and pumice from the beach. I don't know.
Raining down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So I don't know. But so and then they also said they looked into the plane crash, and it was nothing more than just an engine fire that just got out of hand. There was nothing else to it. It wasn't shot down, it wasn't sabotaged, it was your normal old engine fire. I don't know. Again.
Huh.
So so that's essentially it. There's not too much more after that, but you picked up on one of the reasons I picked it, yeah, was because of the Men in Black, which I love. And it's actually, in my research, it is the earliest mention of the Men in Black. So I thought that was cool. Now there may have been a couple, but in my research, it was the earliest. And then the second reason I had picked it is one of the earlier mentions of a flying saucer as we know it. The flying that we picture, because this was a couple months before Roswell, the big alien thing and stuff. So it kind of helped that the whole, the UFOs and flying saucers came into the vernacular or whatever, because due to this story. So I thought that was really interesting. But one last thing, there was an update, and supposedly in 2007, the Seattle Museum of Mysteries somehow obtained some of the metal that had rained down on them, and analyzed this debris and claim that it was nothing. Well, it was a common igneous rocks and possibly fragments from a meteor, but there was no other update after 2007 saying, oh, it was definitely a meteor or this or that. It was just, that was the last update on it from 2007. So I don't know, but that's the story. And I thought that was a lot. I really had fun doing that one.
You know what? You know what I always find funny about stories like the one you just told. The one you just told is it happened in the 40s, correct?
Mm-hmm.
In the 1940s.
Yep, 47.
If it was nothing, if it was just an engine fire or pumice from a beach or what, why in 2007 are they still looking at it? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why in 2007 is that still even kind of on their radar? It almost truly discredits them, not the story, a lot, because if it's nothing at all and it's a lie, it's a hoax, they said it was a hoax.
Yeah.
Why are you still looking at it in 2007?
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because why would you? And then it was completely different when this in 07 when they analyzed it from when the FBI analyzed it. It was what they said it was pumice from the beach and some debris from the water, where then in 07 it's all of a sudden igneous rocks and a meteor. So it's there's a lot there. I mean, and it just how quickly all of a sudden they 2 days into the FBI's investigation, they just say, oh, it's a hoax. After doing all this, what I want to know, no mention of the dog.
Yeah, I was gonna say it, and then part of me was like, well, maybe maybe you didn't read that part because obviously the dog did, but there was nothing.
No, it just said that it killed the dog, and but it's never referenced again. The FBI in their investigation, to my knowledge, never
Well,
brings up the dog. I mean, so what happened to this dog? Then, if it was a
yeah,
hoax, like, I mean, I I I I can't imagine because from the research, these seem like pretty normal people that
yeah.
they would kill a dog just for a hoax. You know what I mean? And, like, nobody would do that because, as you know, like, dogs are, people consider them family members. So I thought that would that one stuck out to me. I was like, what happened to the
Well,
dog?
you would have to assume that if so again, if this happened in 1947 and in 2007 they're still investigating it, there was clearly something that struck the people doing the investigations as odd. That obviously they're not going to tell everybody else because whatever. But I mean, so maybe they took the dog. I mean, it would make sense to take the dog, right, and try to figure out.
You would think.
That's
It's
awful.
weird, and as we've seen with doing these strange encounters now for whatever 22, 23 episodes, is that when when the FBI or authorities get involved, it just weird stuff. They have weird explanations for stuff, and it's like it's almost insulting to your intelligence because it's just like they're so matter of fact. No, it was this and that, and you're like, yeah, but what about this and this and this, and they don't say anything. it's
Yeah.
it can be frustrating. But yeah, I had that was again, that was a fun one for me because again, sometimes, like, guys, when we're doing these strange encounters, there's not a lot of meat to the bone, and so it's a lot of fun when you find one that's got a cool story, and it's like being one of the originators of flying saucers as we know it. I find that fascinating. So yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all I have. What about you?
That is all I have.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in next week when we set up camp in Delaware. Until then, happy camping.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.